Good morning. My name is Nomsa Hampton. I'm the Media Relations Manager with Black Voters Matter. Welcome and thank you for joining us this morning in person and online for the We Fight Back campaign and convening in Charleston, South Carolina. We Fight Back is a national campaign to rally Black voters and amplify the issues impacting Black communities. It serves as a reminder that every vote is a powerful weapon of resistance, a tool of change, and a beacon of hope. It is a call to arms for Black voters to rise, engage, and fight back against inequality and injustice. I want to say a special thank you to our partners who join us in this work to spread love and build power in Black communities. Thank you so much for being here. At this time, I'm going to bring up Dr. Melanie Calhoun for a song. Let's welcome her with some love.
Good morning. Well, the first thing that I did right was the day I started to fight. Keep your eyes on the prize and hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize and hold on, hold on. I think I'll say that one more time. Well, the first thing that I did right was the day I started to fight. Keep your eyes on the prize and hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize and hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize and hold on.
Let's thank Dr. Melanie Calhoun for that. She just brought in the Holy Spirit with us this morning. Thank you for that. At this time, we're going to bring up Cliff Albright, co-founder and executive director of Black Voters Matter.
You know what? I'm used to tough situations and having to follow Latasha Brown after she opens us up with songs. But I ain't never had to follow Melanie Calhoun. Y'all give it up for Melanie again. Welcome, everybody. We are so glad to be here, so excited to be here with this convening, kicking off our national tour, where our theme this year is We Fight Back. And we wanted to come, especially to South Carolina. You know, we thought of this convening for a couple of reasons. One was because we wanted to acknowledge and recognize the importance of South Carolina being moved up to be first in the nation in the Democratic primary. We don't think that that's gotten enough attention. We don't think it's gotten enough discussion. In fact, as people have been talking about the New Hampshire primary and talking about this conflict of, oh, Biden's not on the ballot and somebody else may come get more votes and all this stuff, even as people have been talking about that issue of New Hampshire, they haven't been putting it in the context of why Biden was not on the ballot. He wasn't on the ballot because New Hampshire wasn't supposed to be first. South Carolina was supposed to be first, but New Hampshire went on and tried to skip the line, and that's why it wasn't on the ballot. So to talk about that issue and not talk about South Carolina, and more importantly, to not talk about Black voters, somebody say Black voters.
Black voters.
To not talk about Black voters and the role that we played in 2020 and the role that we are going to play in this election cycle this year, that does a disservice to our community, is disrespectful to our community. And so we wanted to come here. If nobody else was going to do it, we wanted to come here, especially in partnership with our friends in South Carolina, and say we recognize the importance. And we want to have a discussion about South Carolina, and more importantly, and also about how Black voters across the country are going to lead the way. And that's the theme of this conference. Black voters will lead the way. And so when we talk about South Carolina, you know, there's a lot of issues going on here that folks from South Carolina want to talk about, right? I was at the Capitol just yesterday, where a group of organizers, and including the AME Church, are fighting to get a hate crime bill in South Carolina. South Carolina is one of only 2 states that does not have a hate crimes bill, and it's going to be a hate crimes bill named after Clemente Pinckney, who was killed as a result of a hate crime at Mother Emanuel. And so that's an issue that South Carolina, Black folks in South Carolina are working on. But it's not just that. South Carolina is one of only a handful of states, maybe 10 states, that has yet to expand Medicaid. And so, and even evidently last night, the governor of the state basically has doubled down on not expanding Medicaid. This is an issue that Black folks in South Carolina care deeply about because it affects our health as we continue to have disproportionate rates of every illness, whether it's diabetes, cancer, you name it. And so that impacts Black voters, and we want to talk about that. They were also talking about abortion rights and how important that is for our community, because it's not just a matter of even just abortion rights, it's a matter of reproductive health. As Black women across this nation continue to have maternal mortality rates that are 3, 4, 5 times that of the white community, and especially here in South Carolina. So these issues that we're talking about are issues that impact South Carolina, and we want to have a South Carolina discussion. But guess what? Every issue I just named also impacts who? Black folks all across this country. So when we lead the way with South Carolina having discussions around these topics, we're not even just talking about South Carolina, we're talking about the entire Black nation. And so that's why we wanted to be here. And then it's especially important that we're here as you're hearing all these questions around, well, what are Black voters gonna do? All these polls that we're seeing talk about Black voters aren't enthused. Black voters aren't gonna come out. Black voters aren't motivated. Black voters are gonna vote for Trump. So there's all these polls saying all these things, but guess what? Nobody's really having deep conversations with our community. Nobody's really having deep discussions with our community. And so that's another reason that we wanted to come here and just have some real talk. So part of what we'll be doing over the next 3-4 days is that we'll be having those discussions. We'll be having those discussions with young folks, and I'm talking more about that in a second. You'll see this incredible crew of young folks that we got around here. We call them our leaders in transformation. Give it up for the young folks. And I'll come back to them in just a second, but we're going to be doing that discussion. We're also going to be doing trainings with partners, and not even just partners from here in South Carolina, some of whom are going to come up in a minute and talk, but partners from all across the country, training on voting rights, training on communication. So we'll be doing that this week. We're also going to have a wider town hall where we could go even deeper into some of these discussions with just the general community, even beyond young folks, older folks, because this has got to be an intergenerational discussion. Because this has got to be an intergenerational movement. And so we'll be doing that. And on Saturday, if you started to think that all we're going to be doing is having these discussions inside 4 walls, guess what? We're taking it to the streets. And we're going to be going door to door, knocking on doors and having conversations and doing surveys with our folks. Because again, we need to be in conversation with one another. And then also on Saturday, you know, after all the work is done, guess what? We could have a good old party with a purpose. And we could have a low country barbecue. And have some good food and some good folks and some good music. Because at the end of the day, you can't do this work. You can't care about Black voters if you are not all about having some Black love and some Black joy and some Black culture. And so we're going to do all that this week, right? And so other folks are going to come up and talk to you a little bit more about those issues. But I want to just circle back to what I had said earlier when I mentioned the young folks. And I need everybody to be clear about this because there's a lot of criticism sometimes of our young folks. Talk about they're disengaged and they're apathetic and, you know, they're listening to that. Everybody want to tell us about young Black folk who don't know nothing about young Black folk. And so this is what I told them, and this is what I'm going to say here, and we need to be clear about this. Black folks have always been the engine of change in our movements. There would have been no civil rights movement without young folks. Let me say that again. There would have been no civil rights movement without young folks. Whether it's those first four in Greensboro, and we got some folks here from North Carolina A&T, whether it was the four that started the sit-in movement, or whether it was the young folks that led the freedom rides, even after the bombing in Anniston and Birmingham, they went to the fire. Young folks did that. It was young folks in Birmingham that did the Children's March and the Children's Crusade. When you look at those videos of the fire hoses and the dogs, ain't no grown folk in them videos. That's young folk. And then if we want to fast forward, we could fast forward to 2020, where once again, young folks made history with the largest, most sustained movement this country has ever seen. So don't tell me that young folks are apathetic. That's a lie. Somebody done told you a story. Amen. We know different. We've seen different. And we're seeing it right now. And so we're so excited, again, to have this crew here and engage in this discussion that we're going to be engaging with them tonight. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to Nomsa. And thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Cliff. Next, we're going to bring up Trudy Grant with the National Action Network.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Trudy B Grant. I'm the manager of external relations and religious affairs for the National Action Network under the awesome leadership of the Reverend Al Sharpton. Locally, we are led by Reverend Nelson B. Rivers III, who is the Vice President of Religious Affairs and External Relations. Let me just welcome you to our fair city, the place of Gullah Geechee. For all of you that are Kamyas, welcome. For all of you that are Binyas, what's up, homies? Thank you all for being here. We are just excited and indeed privileged to have you with us as we engage in the fight to engage more Black voters. That's where we are. That's what this is leading up to. We need you all to be engaged, and especially our young folks. What a beautiful sight to see all of you beautiful people in this place. It is indeed a pleasure to be here. We have to get involved. Our big push right now, our department is engaged in a fight with Moms for Liberty. If you don't know what that is, please look that up. We're fighting for the education of our children, and we will not let them come in and take over. That's not what they're going to do. As we say in Charleston, that dog won't hunt. Not under our leadership. It will not. So we thank you. We look forward to engaging with you. On Saturday morning, we're going to have a breakfast with clergy at the Charity Missionary Baptist Church, where we're going to teach clergy how to ensure that everyone in their congregation are registered voters. We're going to give them the tools to do it. We're going to give them the power to do it, because we need them, just like we need you. Again, thank you. I look forward to seeing you this weekend. I look forward to you having some good old-fashioned barbecue, because you're going to be at Charity Missionary Baptist Church doing that. Again, on behalf of Reverend Nelson B. Rivers III, the Reverend Al Sharpton, and myself, welcome. God bless each and every one of you.
Next, we'll have Barbara Arnwine with Transformative Justice Coalition. She'll be joining us virtually.
Hi, good morning, everyone. And thank you so much, Black Voters Matters, for pulling us all together at this amazing, beautiful, event. Can't wait to see everyone. The Transformative Justice Coalition is so happy to be participating. We're going to be running a training workshop as part of this amazing conference. And we're going to be talking about some real threats to our right to vote, like the 8th Circuit's NAACP, Arkansas NAACP case, where they're saying there's no private right of action to enforce Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, where, you know, if there's racial discrimination, they're saying you can't do anything about it under the Voting Rights Act if you're a private party. And that the only person who can do so is the U.S. Department of Justice. Not even state attorney generals or anyone else could enforce the law. This is ridiculous. We're going to talk about how we fight back, right? We're going to also, we're going to talk about how we are going to fight the deliberate and ugly campaign to deceive young voters, especially young Black voters, young brown voters, into throwing away their vote by this evil robot generated no vote, don't vote campaign. We're going to talk about how we fight back, how we do that again. We're going to also, you know, talk about how we encourage and promote the vote. We're going to talk about voter contacts, 20 engagement strategies and tactics that we can use around this country to maximize the Black vote. That's right, because that's how we fight back. And we're going to talk about the Freedom to Vote Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act and why we must pass those laws. So, and how do we do that? We're going to really talk about, because everything about this conference is about our ultimate goal, and that is we fight back. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barbara. Next, we're going to bring up Marvin Neil, 3rd VP, NAACP State Conference.
Again, good morning. First, I'd like to, on behalf of South Carolina State Conference, NAACP, President Brendan Murphy, I'd like to say thank you for the invitation and stuff. I think it's a very rewarding opportunity for us to educate, especially our youth and this generation, the next generation, on how we can thrive to move forward with the opportunity to vote, because voting is not just, it's not just about voting. It's about what you do after you vote, following through with policy and everything else. So I'll say today to most of you and everyone that's listening today that your ballot is for freedom. Your ballot is for justice, and your ballot is for change. Nothing happens until you vote. Everything that we do this weekend means nothing if it don't translate at the ballot booth and follow through with policy making. Education comes from voting for Black people. We voted our way into the right to read. It just didn't happen. And I'm speaking directly to our younger people. I have a granddaughter at North Carolina A&T, right now graduating this year in biomedical engineering. And I have to make sure that her generation and your generation that sits there today and those that's listening have those same right and greater opportunities than we have today, because that's what I'm working for. I'm working for the next generation. Hate crime has no place in America, especially in South Carolina. When crosses are still being burnt in Conway, South Carolina, only a Thanksgiving weekend, we have to take that to the ballot booth and make sure a hate crime bill is passed. When we sit in the Black history, the mother of Black history, Charleston, South Carolina, where a pastor and 9 members can be killed in his church, Reverend Clemente Pinckney, one that I knew personally, can be killed. And the killer can be taken to Burger King for a meal, for a happy meal. In South Carolina, we have to take that to the ballot booth. We have to pass the hate crime bill. We have to pass the hate crime bill. Yesterday, I too was at the State House when Bishop Samuel Green spoke and Senator Ronnie Saab spoke, and those that was on the platform. And they spoke of women's right, the right for women to have health care, proper health care, for the choice of what they do with their body. We have to take that to the ballot booth. It is necessary that we fight for everything. And I will remind Black people, Black and brown people, as long as you live, I'm speaking to the youth now. I know this. I don't know if you know this. As long as you live and you have 1 ounce of Black blood in you, you're going to always have to fight for what you want. Don't lose sight of that. When Black superintendents can be removed out of positions and be replaced by Moms for Liberty, hateful white organizations that's trying to ban book in your history, we got to take that to the ballot booth. We have a reason to vote. I just gave you several reasons. When housing is being denied because of the color of your skin, you have to go to the ballot booth. 50 housing in Georgetown right now, 60 miles up the street, being closed down, displaced. In March, children have to go back and try to figure this thing out, what school they're going to be going to for the rest of the year, after three quarters of the year. Parent wondering where they're going to go. You take that to the ballot booth. When housing is being denied in Georgetown, right up the street again, 90 unit in Georgetown, because white people don't want Black people living on the street that they don't own. Voted on by racist county councilmen. You have to take that to the ballot booth. So I'm here today to make sure I take back all that information that I'm going to gain here and take it back to the state of South Carolina, the NAACP, get out the vote. Thank God for Black Vote Matters, because we're going to collaborate on everything that we do and make sure that we do this thing together. We are stronger together. We have to motivate, activate, and educate to make sure that we take everything to the ballot booth. Don't talk about it. Take your friends, neighbors, and everyone to the ballot booth. Everything stops and starts with the vote. With the vote. So Black vote matters. Black vote matters. Don't lose sight of that. We could do all the partying and everything else. Now, I love the party too. But at the end of the day, the vote is what matters. And know that you're going to fight for every one of them. Every year, every time, as long as you're alive, you're going to fight for the Black vote. And they are fighting for your vote too. And a no vote is a vote for hate. A no vote is a vote to ban books of Black history. A no vote is a vote to ban women's rights. A no vote is a vote to ban the rights to freedom. I fought 21 years United States Army and had more freedom in countries that I was fighting for democracy in than we have today in the United States of America and South Carolina. God bless you.
Thank you, Mr. Neil. Next, we'll bring up Dorothy Jenkins, President, NAACP Charleston Branch.
Good morning. Good morning. I stand before you as the NAACP Charleston Branch President. I come to you as a member of Mother Emanuel, where the tragedy occurred with Reverend Pinckney, my pastor, and other members of my church family. My heart aches to think that there's such evil that lives in this world. My heart breaks because there are people who do not know how to judge us by the mentality or the contents of our hearts and our character, but judge us by color and discriminate against us. It's unfortunate that we have not realized that we're better together than apart. It is unfortunate that we don't realize that we're all God's children, working and should be united together. It is unfortunate that we would whitewash history. Why? Because there were decisions that were made that improper. Why? Because they want to hide the truth. The truth will set you free. And we need to tell the truth. Our story is the story of the history of this country. Our people were brought here by force in chains, were killed and slaughtered. And we need to let them know that we were kings and queens in the motherland, that we had treasures that they robbed our earth from there so that they could bring and multiply the fruits of their labor here. We must remember that we came from a legacy of hard-working people, and we've always done that. We had our gala here in November for the NAACP, and our title and our theme was Warriors Fighting for Justice Today. That's because after 400 plus years, we've not realized that the struggle still continues. We still have to fight. We still have to push our way forward in spite of all of the obstacles, mountains, and everything that they put before us. Because like Maya Angelou says, and still we will rise. We are a people who are resilient. Our doors never closed once in Emmanuel. Elder Goff came and he was responsible for carrying on the message of love and unity. And if everyone could just realize that, what a mighty world we would have. If men and women could come together as one and realize that my blood bleeds red just like yours, and that we will all suffer if we don't work together. We need climate control. We need to make sure that there's clean water for our people and our children. We had a school board that did some unmountable things here in just the last week. When the people have told you what the desire is and you ignore them, shame on you. Because we have expressed our concerns, we now have to go to the polls and show them that we will not allow it. We have to prove to them that we will organize, strategize, and prioritize so that we will make our voices heard. The more we have, the more power we have. The more power we have, the stronger we are. So together we will move forward, collectively, one with another. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jenkins. Next, we're going to bring up Adrien Conner Jr. He's a student activist.
Hello all, I am Adrien Conner Jr., a student from Grambling State University, and I was asked today to speak on the importance of the youth vote. But I can't speak for everyone. I can only give my own perspective, so do bear with me with this. But I do think that I speak for a lot of people when I say that I'm tired. I'm tired of having to be numb every time I see a hashtag. I'm tired of every time I see there's been another school shooting, yet you don't want to protect the child that's here with us now, but you would rather go against the woman who has to bear the child. I'm tired of having to open my phone every day and seeing that there is yet again some other person who has been elected into power who has the ability to speak and do for me that doesn't even want me to exist. I'm tired of being able to go out into any community and having to look over my shoulder because I'm not sure what is going to truly happen when I open my eyes the next day, if I'm able to. But all in all, when I say that I'm tired of being 24 and saying that I'm tired. I'm tired of having to go and say, oh, well, woe is me. No, woe is not me. Woe is those who go against us. Woe is those who do not know what they can truly do. See, this is something that I would like to say about the youth. Gen Z, we have been able to sit back and observe. For the entirety of our life, everything has been laid bare, laid at the forefront, laid at our feet for us to dissect and digest every single day. There has not been a day that the news was not in our face. And when you feed something information time and time and time again, you have no option but to act. You have no option but to move with what you have been given. And so with that said, to those who say, oh, we should not go out and vote, oh, we should not go out and do, let me just tell you something about how I was raised. See, I come from a household where my father was a mechanic and my mother was a counselor. Yes, we were designed to help people, help and fix things. That's what the household was meant to do. My father, he would take me to work sometimes with him and he would have tools in his bag, but every time he would go to fix a car, he didn't fix it with just one tool. He didn't fix it with just a wrench. He wouldn't fix it with just a hammer. He wouldn't fix it with just some oil. No, it was the culmination of all the tools that he had in order to make the main purpose of the car go forward. That's what voting is. It's one tool. Voting is one tool that we have as a people in order to truly push forward. Voting is one tool that we have to make our voice heard. And today, just this morning, we learned of ways that we can possibly even make our voice heard even more. But not only is that a case scenario of what we have now, what happens when we do go out and vote? We do get that elected official. See, we were also educated on this thing called checks and balances. Well, if you're not going to check yourself when my taxes are writing your check, I'm going to make sure that I check you. I'm going to make sure that I balance that out. And I can only speak from my perspective, but I'm pretty sure that if my cohort members agree with me, I can get an ashe. So with that said, be prepared to be in checks and balances. Be prepared to be held accountable. Be prepared to answer to the people that put you in the power, because the power truly relies with the people. Ashe.
I think we just got the word. I think so. And next up, we've got joining us virtually Amir Badat with the NAACP Legal Defense Fund.
Good morning, and thank you so much. My name is Amir Badat, and I'm voting special counsel and manager of the Prepared to Vote and Voting Rights Defender projects at the Legal Defense Fund. LDF is the nation's premier legal organization fighting for racial justice. We are nonpartisan, and we've been on the front lines fighting for voting rights for Black Americans for more than 80 years. And it is really an honor to join my colleagues here today. And I want to give a special shout out to our friends at Black Voters Matter for organizing this incredibly important convening ahead of an incredibly important election. Almost 4 years ago, Black voters in South Carolina and across the country turned out to vote like never before. The 2020 general election saw historic turnout among Black voters and other voters of color. And in the face of this dramatic exercise of Black political power, we have witnessed a white supremacist backlash that is actively trying to silence Black voices. We are currently facing an attack on voting rights like we have not seen in generations. State legislatures are passing voter suppression bills and discriminatory redistricting maps. Hostile federal courts are attempting to weaken the protections of the Voting Rights Act. and mis and disinformation are targeting Black communities. So what do we do in the face of all of these threats? What do we do in the face of voter suppression? We fight back. What do we do in the face of hostile federal courts? We fight back. And what do we do in the face of mis and disinformation? We fight back, because we have no choice but to fight back. So how do we fight back? We start here in South Carolina. On behalf of the South Carolina NAACP State Conference, we are litigating a challenge to the racially gerrymandered congressional redistricting map in South Carolina and are currently awaiting a decision from the U.S. Supreme Court. And ahead of this election, together with the nonpartisan South Carolina Election Protection Coalition, we are running a statewide election protection program with command centers in multiple cities and nonpartisan poll monitors on the ground across the state, visiting polling locations, resolving obstacles to voting, and assisting Black voters every step of the way to ensure that they are able to cast their ballots and have them counted. We also have folks monitoring social media and traditional media to identify and help respond to issues related to mis and disinformation that are targeting Black communities. In addition, the National Election Protection Coalition's voter hotline is already up and running. Folks in South Carolina are already voting. Early voting has started, and the hotline is available. So anyone in South Carolina or anywhere else in the country who has a question about voting, whether it's about how to locate your polling location, what ID you need to bring to the polling place, or what times the polls are open, please call the hotline. The number is 1-866-OUR-VOTE. If you are facing voter suppression, or know someone who is, please call the hotline, 1-866-OUR-VOTE. That's 1-866-687-8683. South Carolina is where we start. We will be fighting back across the country during the primaries and the general election in November. And I want to be clear, when I say we fight back, the we that I'm talking about is not just LDF, it's not just Black Voters Matter and all of the organizations that are presenting here today. The we is voters, it's community members, it's teachers and college students and nurses and wage workers. The we is you. You have the power to fight back. You have the power to serve as a poll monitor. You have the power to serve as a hotline volunteer. You have the power to knock on some doors. You have the power to vote. The right to vote is fundamental, and it is protective of all other rights. The people we elect make decisions that impact our daily lives. So how do we ensure that we have adequate access to health care? We vote. How do we protect abortion rights and Black maternal health? We vote. How do we give our kids a quality education that teaches them the truth? We vote. So I'm really excited to be here, to be working with all of these amazing leaders, and to be in the community. And I'm so excited to kick off this election cycle in South Carolina. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That wraps up our speakers for today. We're going to get ready for questions in just a moment. I do want to ask that our participants online, if you could please go ahead and start dropping your questions in the chat. We have one of our team members who will monitor those and get them out. At this time, we'll take any questions from the press.
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, it's a great question, but one that's kind of hard to answer because, as you know, we're not necessarily really facing a contested primary, right? And so anytime you don't have a contested primary, you're not going to see the same level of turnout, right? But there are other indications that we have to show like how involved and motivated and engaged that Black voters are going to be. For example, even right here in North Charleston, there's a special election taking place for one of the House districts, right? And so 109. And so, being able to look at that election, which isn't a presidential, but it's still important, right? And so that'll be some measurement of how engaged Black voters are. And then, other things will be, how much we're attending things like this, or how much we're participating in days at the Capitol, like what we had yesterday. So it's not going to be as simple as just looking at what the turnout is in the primaries, because it's not really a competitive primary. But again, the other way that you can figure out how enthused and what our issues are and what we're talking about is by talking to us, not just polling us, because you can only figure out but so much on a poll. Put the same energy into talking to us that they put into finding Trump voters in every random diner all throughout the Midwest and all the other parts of the country. Like, show that same energy in terms of actually talking to our community and finding out what's going on, because there are no simple answers to any of this, no simple answers to what's driving enthusiasm. You got to have real talk with folks to really get to the heart of what's going on.
We've got another question in the back. Oh, you may as well stay up here.
If anybody, wants to chime in on any of these questions. Yep.
So you basically expressed why it's so important for people of color in general to go out and vote, especially with what's going on with the abortion rights, the book bans. Could you go a little bit into detail into why young Black voters should go out and vote?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and that's probably, I'm gonna let Adrien definitely come up and answer that, but I'll answer from my perspective. I mean, look at the issues that young folks are concerned about. Like I said, in the streets for months over criminal justice reform, right? Over police accountability. So having some real discussions around, what has happened and what still needs to happen. No, the George Floyd Act hasn't been passed, but guess what? The people that killed Breonna Taylor, right, indicted, right? The people that killed Ahmaud Arbery, right, in jail. The person that killed George Floyd, yes, there were state charges, but guess what? Federal charges also were on him. And so having a discussion around, chokeholds and no-knock warrants and how that's been banned at the federal. So the issues that young folks care about, whether it's police accountability, gun violence, like Adrien was saying, we got a whole generation who have grown up doing active shooter drills. I didn't have to do that growing up, but that's been their experience. And so that's an issue that they want to talk about and that needs to show up in this election. Young folks care about climate change and environmental justice, right? And not just because of grand notions of climate, but in our communities, how does it show up? In terms of utility bills, in terms of natural disasters in some of our communities that get flooded and destroyed, right? And so young folks care about climate change because at the end of the day, what we've been saying, oh, well, that may happen, but it won't be in our lifetimes. It is exactly happening in their lifetimes. So these are all issues that they want to talk about, and it's important that they be heard. But guess what? It doesn't just impact them. It impacts all of us. Adrien, please.
I'm sorry, your name was Adrien?
Yes, Adrien Conary.
Okay, Adrien, nice to meet you. You said you were tired. I mean, I think everybody can say that they're tired too. They're exhausted for what's going on. Could you explain why are you so tired?
Well, we were sold a dream called the American Dream growing up. And right now I sit as 24, full-time job, college educated, can't get a house. I sit and I hear of, every time I look at my pay stub, there's a part of it that comes out that goes to Social Security, and I don't think I'll ever see that again. So there's a lot of different things that come into play where you're like, I'm putting in this work now. Where's my return on investment? We're a capitalistic country, so everything is a business standpoint anyway. Where is my return on investment? I've bought into the system. I've bought into what you've sold me. I've bought in time and time again. When is it going to start to pay me back as the individual who has to put in the funds to make it happen? So, and I do speak for a lot of us when I say that we don't want to be against anything. We want to enjoy what we've been promised. There's not a sense of aggravation that doesn't come from oh, well, I just want to rebel. No, that's not what this is at all. But no type of boycott, no type of rebellion has ever been in the great mindset or seen in a good light by those that are doing the oppressing. So there will be no type of act of going against or act of being tired that someone won't see as, oh, well, you're being lazy or you should just buy in, because they're the ones that's benefiting from what you do. So yes, very much tired. And then going back to what Mr. Albright was speaking about, you truly want to be able to speak about the problems that you have laid before you. We've always said, if you see something, say something. I see a lot. I've seen a lot, and I don't want to continue to see what I've been seeing. But when I try to say something, you silence me. When I try to say something, you stop me from being able to vote. When I try to say something, you make it to where people can't register to vote, or you change the rules of the game. Stop changing the rules, allow me to participate. So that's pretty much, in a nutshell, why I'm so tired. And there is no rest that can happen because it's a restless tired that we have. So.
And why should before you leave, why should young voters go out and vote?
Well, you can't want for the game to change if you don't participate in it. You can't want for anything to happen. Growing up, I played football, and I went from having to see what we called a hit stick to where now if you do a hit stick, there are some consequences, and you may not be able to play for the rest of the season if you do such things. But it took me participating in the game to see, okay, these are the dangers. We might need to change this. The more that the game gets played, the more that the rules must change, but it has to change in favor of those that's actually playing it, not those spectating, not those that are sitting up at the high rise, not those that get to just sit back and relax as other people have to go through the turmoil of whatever it is that's happening on the field. This is why we're taking the field, and we want for the game to be changed.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to do a quick check-in. Is there any comments online? No comments online. Okay, any additional questions? Okay.
Hey, I'm Kenna. I'm from the Post and Courier here in Charleston. I have a question about voter education. Obviously, all of you young voters here are very passionate about being educated. How would you encourage some of your friends, I guess along the lines of misinformation that they might find online, how would you encourage your friends to seek out resources that might prevent that misinformation?
You want to take that one?
I'm just going to stand up. Sorry. So the best way that we can go about that, first and foremost, is by researching for ourselves. There are a plethora of different options that we have as far as spreading information, and that is how a lot of this misinformation has been getting out. But the best way that we can truly hone in on that problem itself is to have forums like this, to have it to where people can openly ask whatever questions there may be, openly rise these problems that they see. And with us being able to do that, then we're able to decipher, okay, this is what the truth is. What aligns in our interests moving forward? A lot of different times when we have these different outlets that are more so biased to one side, it's very difficult to get an unbiased view in today's time because everybody has an opinion and everybody wants to be heard. But some people, they have a megaphone while others naturally speak louder than others. But it's difficult to hone in on something that's so vast. It's truly just about who has the most influence. So when it comes to fighting and combating against misinformation, the only thing that we can really do is just get out in front of their face and just tell them for face value, this is what this is. This is what this isn't. And this is how it helps you. And this is how it harms you. If there's any way to do a SWOT analysis on every single thing on the ballot, then by all means, we need to. What are the strengths of this bill? What are the weaknesses of this bill? How are the opportunities and the threats that go along with it? And how can we make it forward to where it helps you? But that just depends on if there's a listening ear for it.
Can I chime in on this one as well? This is Amr from Virtual Land. I just want to say one thing, which is, the press has a huge role to play in helping us combat mis and disinformation. And so to all of the reporters in the room today, we really are counting on you to help us in making sure that the correct information is being reported. And one of the most trusted sources of information for many people in communities across the country is their local news. And so we're really counting on you to collaborate with us and work with us in getting information that is correct and accurate out there, and in not giving a platform to the mis and disinformation that has already started spreading and that we can expect to continue to start spreading. So the media has a huge role to play in this, and we hope that it's a collaborative relationship that we can build with you.
Hi, I'm Kennedy Jackson, and I'm also just going to give a little different of a take on this question. I think that in the conversation of voter education, it also really needs to be looked at from the lens of the person who isn't that involved in politics or who isn't that interested in learning about what's happening in our country. Because I think that if we're honest, there's a lot of young people who are interested in taking the field, but there are a lot of young people who are tired and who are not interested in taking the field. And I think that in voter education, you have to really target those people who are tired and not, and really that's where that canvassing comes from, getting to know your neighbor. Like, you really have to target the people who are not always as interested on being on the front lines or learning about what all of this means. That's a piece that always gets kind of left out.
Thank you. Thank you. Any additional questions?
I'm sorry, just for like media purposes, will we have like a list of the names of the people that spoke just so we could have it right on air?
Yes, we'll make sure we provide that to you.
Okay, just one last question for you, sir. You mentioned, I believe it was you mentioned about meeting people where they stand. Like, you plan on going out. Could you talk to me a little bit about that? A lot of people sometimes when they say meet people where they stand, they don't kind of comprehend, but yeah.
Got you. Before I answer that, though, just to piggyback on what was just shared about in terms of the youth perspective, that's part of the reason why we are holding this discussion tonight and why we called it what we called it, right? Because we wanted to send a message. This isn't your usual discussion where we just want young folks who are already involved to just come and talk to each other, right? We want folk to come who are not engaged. We want folk to come who are skeptical. So if you are a young person watching this right now, or if you're somebody who knows a young person watching this right now, this is not a discussion where they're going to become and preach to about how crazy and lazy they are and how they need to. This is really a discussion for all different thoughts and ideas and perspectives to come together. If you're not engaged and you're not feeling it, and you're a young person that's like, I'm just not in the vote, I don't want to vote, we want you to come. Again, not to preach, but to share your perspective, because you're not alone, right? And we want to send that message. The question about meeting people where they are, and in particular, you're asking particularly about the Saturday outreach there, or just in general?
Just in general.
Yeah, I mean, we say it all the time that Black Voters Matter, right? Being an organizer isn't about how well you talk. It's about how well you listen, right? And some of us grew up hearing the saying, right? The Lord gave us one mouth and two ears, right? And so, and that's really what it's about, is meeting people. When we hear from somebody, I'm not feeling this voting thing, I don't want to be engaged. We don't respond by like just turning them off. We certainly don't respond by like skipping them over and just going to the next door. We try to have a conversation, right? Okay, well, tell me, because guess what? I feel the same way. And that's not a lie. I've been doing this work, voter mobilization work, for 25 to 30 years. And there's not a day that goes by when I don't wake up and ask myself, kind of like what King said, where he asked the question, am I integrating my people into a burning house? So I'm not always convinced that this is necessarily the best strategy. And part of what keeps me going is what Adrien talked about earlier, is that it's just one tool, right? Because we also got to be engaged in the other racial justice organizing work. We got to be engaged in doing protests and making good trouble. We got to be engaged in economic development. So part of what lets me engage is because I know it's not the end all be all. And when you approach somebody with that type of discussion, right, which first affirms what they're saying, because what they're saying is their lived experience. They're not making it up. When a young person or an older person says, too many of these elected officials have not done what they're supposed to do, what am I supposed to say? You lying? Like, that's facts, right? And so we got to affirm the frustrations. We got to affirm their lived experience. We got to affirm what they're saying, because there's truth in it. But then we got to take the conversation deeper, you know. And sometimes what we do is we pivot away from voting and say, well, forget the voting thing. Just tell what's important in your life. What would you like to see different about your community? Right? And then we start having a conversation about that. I want to see more basketball courts. You know, I wish I could get paid more. You know, I wish the housing was better, right? We just start talking about what it is that they see for themselves and their families, right? And when you engage in that discussion, when you center the person and not the voting process, when you center the person and not the registration form on the clipboard, now you're in a real dialogue. And so that's part of what we mean when we talk about meeting them where they're at. It's not just about literally going into the community, because a lot of people will go into the community and still not meet you where you at, right? So when we say it, it's not just talking, it's not from a geographic perspective. It's from the perspective of really engaging in real dialogue and affirming their lived experience and having a deeper conversation that centers them and their family and their communities. And that's how you get the change. And because, like we always say, everybody we touch is an organizer. Everybody is an organizer and has some role to play. And I've seen it, I've done it, we've done it as an organization. When we use that approach, that same person who started the conversation with "I ain't voting," by the end of the conversation, we've seen them be moved to, you know what, I might come out and vote, right? Or, you know what, I'm still not sure if I'm feeling it, but I'm gonna come to the next meeting and talk about it some more. And that's movement, right? And so everybody has a chance to be an organizer. We just got to believe that and then act out of that belief.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're actually, Deborah, you had a question? Yeah, a quick question.
And is it, sorry. How different is this get out the vote effort different than 2020, this season? And is it more important? And if so, why?
That's a good question.
And then again, anybody who wants to jump in, it's different. In some ways, in some ways it's easier, right? You know, because we forget, you know, we did such a good job with turnout in 2020. And when I say we, I'm not just talking about Black Voters Matter, I mean across the spectrum. We really forget the obstacles we were facing, right? We were in the middle of a pandemic. We couldn't even knock on doors. We had to do caravans and hold up signs and organize from a distance, right? And start to find creative ways to use QR codes and digital organizing. So and that's just the logistical difficulties of organizing in a pandemic, and not just in the pandemic, but organizing in the midst of the protest and George Floyd and the reckoning. So you're dealing with a community that's scared, that's sick, that's mad and frustrated. It was hard making history in 2020, right? And so in some ways, this year is actually a little bit easier. In other ways, it's more difficult, right? We talked about the disinformation. We saw disinformation in 2016 and 2020, particularly disinformation targeted to young Black folks. That's documented. That's not conspiracy theory. It was documented. It was fake social media accounts and all these other things. It was fake robocalls. And now look 4 years later and what we got. What are we talking about in the news every day? AI, right? Fake photos going around of certain people sitting with 6 young Black men. You know that ain't never happened, right? And so, you know, a fake robocall the other day with AI, you know, you doing Biden's voice. And so there's a lot of stuff that's going to be going around over the next 8 to 10 months. And it's going to be directed to our community in general and to younger Black voters in general. So that makes it more difficult. And then obviously the elephant in the room is that after 2020, we saw the wave of voter suppression laws that have swept the country. And so we're now having to do 24 in a different kind of voting rights context, right? No drop boxes. Even in the states where drop boxes were wildly successful, increased turnout ridiculously, and then they came back and said, ooh, that worked a little bit too well. Let's get rid of those, right? Let's cut some more polling places. Let's make it easier to purge people from the rolls. Let's make it easier to take over the county board of elections, which some states can do now, right? And we've seen it happening in states. So obviously there's a voting rights context, which makes it more difficult. So at the end of the day, you know, it probably doesn't even out, right? It's easier in some ways and it's harder in some ways. But what we know is there's never been our time in a history, a Black history, when we were faced with challenges like this, that we decided, okay, I think I'm gonna sit this one out, right? That's not the story of our history, right? And that's why we came up with this theme of We Fight Back. Because in part, it's a message to those who are trying to oppress us, the forces of white supremacy and anti-Blackness. We're letting them know we fight back. But it's also an internal call for our community, for folks that might be thinking we can just sit this one. And it's a reminder that y'all, when we're under attack, what do? We fight back, right? And so it's a call for all of us to get involved, to not sit it out, to not just be so frustrated that we don't engage, to not be so frustrated that we wind up giving the enemy the very thing that they want. We can't do that. We fight back. So it's harder in some ways, but easier in one way in terms of the pandemic. But at the end of the day, the strategy and the tactics are still going to be the same. We fight back, and we fight back together.
And Cliff.
Yep.
Yeah, this is Barbara. I have to go, but I did want to get in on this conversation for two reasons. One is to point out that the one thing that's better about this year is what you see, those beautiful young Gen Z and young millennial voters that you're looking at right there in that room. They are the largest voting cohort this year. For the first time in history, younger voters will be the largest voting bloc in the country. And that means a real sea change, especially in that we're seeing a greater mobilization of young voters and they're voting consciously pro-democracy more than any other voting bloc in history, that they're just, really obsessed with protecting the democracy at a very huge percentage rate. The other thing I want to point out is that's going to be real different than 2022 is the Dobbs voters. This mobilization that we will be seeing in the participation of people voting for reproductive rights is going to be strong throughout the country. And in fact, we've seen some evidence that it's even making inroads where people did not think it would. So there's a lot of change, but it's going to be this whole election is going to be driven by the young vote. So thank you. And thanks so much for this amazing conference. Great job, Black Voters Matters. Much love.
Thank you so much. We have one more comment. We're going to wrap up. After this, we are a little bit over time. Our students have to get back to their work sessions. We've got one more comment. After that, if anybody would like to do individual interviews, if you have additional questions, we can do that following the exit of the students.
This is 15 seconds. After 2020, a day that we all should remember is January 6th. That set the tone. That idiot set the tone for what hate looks like and accepted in America by politicians and elected officials. That sets the tone. Number two, when we go to the streets and we reach everyone where they are, elected officials has an accountability after they get into those positions to go back to the streets. Because every dog that's in the fight belongs to them, especially Black elected officials. They have to go back to the streets and tell these young voters, the ones that feel as though their vote don't count, they have to tell them why their vote don't count. And these young voters, if that's not acceptable to you, you prepare yourself and you run for office. That's necessary. Don't quit, fight back, and that's the way you fight back. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to close out. I'm going to give an opportunity for our students to just head out in just a second. Just wanted to mention lastly, for media who is interested in joining us on the Blackest Bus in America for the We Fight Back GOTV bus tour, we're inviting you to reach out to our media team at media@blackvotersmatterfund.org. If you're interested in joining us, we can provide some details for you at that point. In addition, this year, we're also going to be providing a photo and video library of actions and events and stories that are taking place on the ground. So we invite you to join us, to partner with us, reach out to our media team, media@blackvotersmatterfund.org again. Thank you so much for. Okay, y'all, the boss needs to say something else. Come on.
Yeah, not so much to say something else, but really just to close out, because before the students go, I just want us all to do something, and we all know a little something in terms of culture of call and response, and everybody in the room can help out as well. When I say Black voters, you say matter. Black voters, Black voters. When I say love, you say power. Love, love. Thank y'all so much.
All righty, we're gonna close out. If there are any additional questions, you all can see me. We'll go ahead and arrange those later on after the students have exited.